The call came at 2:47 a.m., jolting me awake with that specific ringtone I'd assigned to my mother years ago, the one that always made my stomach clench. I almost declined it, like I had dozens of times before, but something in me hesitated. Maybe it was the late hour, or maybe it was the fact that she hadn't tried to contact me in 8 months. My name is Skylar, and I'm the kind of person who color-codes their budget spreadsheets and has their retirement plan mapped out at 25. The kind of person who's been working since 16, who moved out at 18, and who learned early that depending on family was a luxury I couldn't afford. "Mom?" I answered, voice rough with sleep. "Baby, I need you." The tremor in her voice was familiar, theatrical almost, but with just enough genuine panic to make my chest tight. "The bank. They're taking the house. Your childhood home, Skylar. I don't know what to do." I sat up in bed, fully awake now. "What do you mean, taking the house?" "Foreclosure." She choked on a sob. "I need help. I know I have no right to ask, but you're the only one, the only responsible one." Classic mom. Flattery wrapped in crisis, served with a side of guilt. But something felt different this time. The desperation in her voice seemed real. "I'll come by tomorrow," I said, already regretting it. "No, please, now, I can't sleep. Mauricio is here. He can explain everything better than I can." "Mauricio? My husband." I nearly dropped the phone. "Your what?" "Please, Skylar, just come." 40 minutes later, I pulled up to the house I'd sworn never to return to. Except, it wasn't the same house. This one was bigger, newer, in a better neighborhood. A sleek black Mercedes sat in the driveway alongside Mum's familiar, beaten-up Civic. Mum threw open the door before I could knock. She looked different. Expensive highlights, designer clothes, but with red-rimmed eyes and smeared mascara that seemed genuine enough. "Baby!" She pulled me into a hug that smelled of Chanel No. 5 and desperation. A man appeared behind her. Tall, distinguished-looking, maybe early 50s. He wore a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "You must be Skylar," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Mauricio. Your mother speaks of you often." I bet she does, I thought, but shook his hand anyway. They led me to a living room that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Mum perched on the edge of an elegant sofa, wringing her hands. "The thing is," she began, "we're behind on payments. The bank won't work with us anymore. They're giving us 2 weeks. Mauricio nodded gravely. "I've tried everything. My assets are tied up in development projects. If we had just $30,000 to bring the mortgage current..." I felt my eyebrows rise. "$30,000? "I know you're good with money, baby," Mum said quickly. "You always save. And I know it's so much to ask, but Mauricio will match whatever you can contribute. We just need to buy time until his next project closes." "I've never asked for help before," she added softly. I almost laughed at that lie, but something in her eyes stopped me. She looked scared, really scared. "Can I see the foreclosure notice?" I asked. Mum glanced at Mauricio. "It's all filed electronically now, but we can show you the payment history." "Tomorrow," Mauricio cut in smoothly. "The hour is late. Perhaps Skylar needs time to think?" I nodded, standing. The whole situation felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on why. Mum walked me to the door, clutching my arm. "Please, baby, I know I've made mistakes, but this is different. I can't lose everything now, not when things are finally getting better." I promised to think about it, just to make her let go of my arm. As I turned to leave, something caught my eye in the kitchen. Glossy brochures on the counter. Cruise line brochures. One was folded open to a Caribbean itinerary, with next week's date circled in red. My mother's voice called after me. "Drive safe, baby!" I got into my car, hands shaking slightly as I gripped the steering wheel. The cruise brochures kept flashing in my mind. Something was very wrong here, and for once in my life, I was going to figure out exactly what it was. "Those cruise brochures can't be a coincidence," I said, pacing our apartment kitchen, while my roommate Jocelyn sat at the counter, nursing her morning coffee. "Your mum's always been sketchy with money," Jocelyn replied. "But asking for 30 grand while planning a vacation? That's next level." I pulled out my laptop. "Help me dig?" "Girl, you know I live for this drama." Jocelyn slid her chair closer. "Where do we start?" Property records, they're public. I typed rapidly, pulling up the county assessor's website. Let's see what this house situation really is. 20 minutes later, we sat staring at the screen in disbelief. No mortgage, Jocelyn whispered. The house is owned free and clear by Mauricio Perkins Properties LLC, which means no foreclosure. My hands were shaking. She lied. Again. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through old emails until I found what I was looking for. My grandmother Marlene's contact info. We hadn't spoken in years, not since Mum turned the family against her. But if anyone knew the truth. She answered on the second ring. Skylar, is everything okay? Grandma, I need to ask you something about Mum, about the old house. A long pause. You better come over, honey. There's a lot you should know. An hour later, I sat in Marlene's small but immaculate living room, clutching a cup of tea that had gone cold. Your mother sold the old house last year, Marlene said, pulling out a folder stuffed with newspaper clippings and documents. Made quite a profit, too. The neighbourhood had gentrified. She told everyone she was starting fresh, finding herself. Marlene's laugh was bitter. Next thing we knew, she'd married this developer, Mauricio. But why lie about foreclosure? Why ask me for money when... Because that's what Angela does, Marlene cut in. Here, look at these. She spread out papers across her coffee table. Bank statements, court documents, letters from attorneys. 10 years ago, she convinced me to cash out my retirement to invest in a business opportunity. $45,000. When I asked for it back, she turned hysterical, told everyone I was trying to ruin her life. Marlene's hands trembled slightly. The family believed her. They always do. I remember that fight, I said softly. She told me you were trying to control her, that you were jealous of her success. Success? Marlene snorted. Check your old accounts, Skylar, the ones she had access to when you were younger. I bet you'll find some interesting transactions. Back home, I did exactly that. It took 3 password reset attempts, but I finally got into my teenage savings account, the one Mom had helped me set up at 16 for my first job. Holy shit, Jocelyn breathed, looking over my shoulder. Is that? A cruise confirmation, booked last week using my old account number. I felt sick. She must have kept the information all these years, waiting. But there's no money in that account anymore, right? No, I cleared it out when I moved out. The charge will bounce. I kept scrolling through Mom's emails. She'd used my old email address as the backup for her accounts. Look at this. She's been planning this cruise for months. It's some luxury package with Mauricio. While asking you to bail her out of a fake foreclosure? Jocelyn shook her head. That's cold, even for her. My phone buzzed. A text from Mum. Have you thought about helping your family? Time is running out, baby. I stared at the message, something hardening inside me. You know what? I'm done being manipulated. I opened my laptop again, this time searching for Mauricio's business contacts. His company website listed his partner, Philip Nichols. What are you doing? Jocelyn asked. Getting answers. I found Philip's business email. Mum's been lying to everyone for years, playing us against each other. Maybe it's time someone started telling the truth. Be careful, Jocelyn warned. Your mum's got a way of turning things around. Not this time? I started typing the email to Philip. This time I have proof, and I'm going to make sure everyone sees exactly who she really is. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Mum. Mauricio's planning a farewell dinner next week. Small gathering, very elegant. We'd love for you to come, baby. Show everyone what a loving daughter you are. I smiled grimly at the screen. Oh, I'll come to dinner, Mom, but you might not like what I'm bringing to the table. Skylar? Jocelyn's voice held a warning note. Don't worry, I said, hitting send on the email to Philip. I'm not going to cause a scene. I'm going to do something much worse. I'm going to tell the truth. There's more, Marlene said, pulling a dusty box from her hall closet. I've been keeping these for years, hoping someone would finally want to know the truth. I'd come back to my grandmother's house after Philip's cryptic response to my email. Let's talk. Some things aren't adding up on our end either. Marlene dumped the contents of the box onto her dining room table, a cascade of papers, photos, and notebooks spanning decades of my mother's deceptions. Look at this first, she said, handing me a court summons from 15 years ago. Your mother borrowed money from your Aunt Sarah for a medical emergency. When Sarah tried to collect, Angela claimed she'd never received the money, even testified to it in court. How much? 20,000. Sarah had to sell her car to cover the debt she took on to help her sister. Marlene's voice cracked. She couldn't afford Christmas presents for her kids that year? My hands trembled as I sorted through more documents. Credit card statements, bounce checks, tearful letters from family members begging for repayment. Wait, I said, picking up a small leather-bound journal. Is this your mother's? Found it when she left it here years ago. Page 47. Read it. I flipped to the page, dated 5 years ago. My blood ran cold. Leverage inventory, I read aloud. Skylar, responsible, career-focused. Guilt points, childhood sacrifices, single mother struggles, financial pressure, high savings, emotional weakness about family obligations. Below my name was my brother's. Kyson, unreliable, easily manipulated. Guilt points, father abandonment, need for maternal approval, financial pressure, none. Broke, but useful for emotional manipulation of siblings. Keep reading, Marlene urged. Sarah, bleeding heart, trusting. Guilt points, sister bond, Christian values, financial pressure, home equity, children's college funds. I couldn't continue. She categorized everyone like we were marks in a con game. Because that's exactly what we were. Marlene pulled out her phone, showing me a recent text. Your brother messaged me yesterday. First time in years. Guess what he wanted? Money? Said your mum told him I was hoarding family inheritance, that I owed him his share. She laughed bitterly. There is no inheritance. Your mother made sure of that years ago. My phone buzzed. A text from Kyson. Hey sis, you talking to mum? She says you're being difficult about helping with the house. Don't be selfish. Right on cue, I muttered. There's something else you need to see. Marlene pulled out a thick manila envelope. These are photos from your mother's first wedding. Not to your father or Kyson's father, to a man named Robert 20 years ago. The photos showed my mother, younger but wearing that same manipulative smile, next to a distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit. What happened to him? She cleaned out their joint accounts while he was on a business trip. Nearly $500,000. He had a heart attack when he found out. Did he die? No, but she told everyone he did. Used it for sympathy points when she met your father. Marlene's eyes were hard. She's doing it again, Skylar. Same pattern, different mark. This time it's Mauricio. The cruise, I said slowly. She's planning something. Check the dates on those cruise tickets again. I pulled up the confirmation email. Next Wednesday to... Oh, God. What? It's one way. Only she and Mauricio are booked for the departure, but only she has a return ticket. My hands started shaking. She's going to clean him out during the trip. Like Robert? No, I said, reading through more of Mauricio's company details on my phone. Much bigger. Mauricio's company is about to close a huge development deal. The profits would be in their joint account by the time they're at sea. Marlene grabbed my arm. Skylar, listen to me. Your mother isn't just manipulative. She's dangerous. When people confront her... I know. I stood up, gathering the most damning documents. That's why we're not confronting her. We're going to do something much worse. What? We're going to that farewell dinner, and we're going to let her hang herself with her own lies. I held up her journal. Every single one of them. My phone buzzed again. Mom. Baby, about the dinner. Wear something nice. Mauricio's friends are very influential people. Wouldn't want them thinking I raised you wrong. I texted back, Don't worry, Mum. I'll make sure everyone sees exactly how you raised me. Looking up at Marlene, I felt a cold certainty settle over me. She taught me everything I know about planning ahead. Time to show her how well I learned. Philip agreed to meet me at a quiet coffee shop downtown, away from his and Mauricio's usual business haunts. He arrived exactly on time, wearing an expensive suit that somehow made him look more worried than professional. I had my assistant verify some things after your email, he said, sitting down with his espresso. The numbers don't match what Angela told us. What exactly did she tell you? That she owned the house outright, but medical debt from her last divorce forced her to take out a predatory loan. He rubbed his temples. Mauricio wanted to help, but our company's funds are tied up in the River Heights development until closing. There is no loan, I said, sliding copies of the property records across the table. And no medical debt. But I bet the River Heights timing isn't a coincidence. Philip studied the documents, his frown deepening. The closing is next week, day after they leave for the cruise. He looked up sharply. How did you know about the cruise? Because she booked it using my old account information. I showed him the confirmation emails. Notice anything strange about the tickets? He scanned them quickly. Only one return. Jesus. He pulled out his phone, scrolling rapidly. The River Heights profits would hit our accounts that Friday. Mauricio gave Angela joint access to everything when they married. How much? 7 figures. He put down his phone. But there's something else. The trust fund? What trust fund? Mauricio's lawyer insisted on a post-nuptial agreement. Any proven financial fraud voids Angela's claims to shared assets. He leaned forward. If someone could prove she lied about the house, about her past, I can prove a lot more than that. I pulled out copies of the documents from Marlene's box. Previous marriages, stolen money, court records, even a journal where she literally planned how to manipulate people. Philip's hands shook slightly as he read. Mauricio needs to see this. Not yet, I said. Mum's planning this big farewell dinner next week. All of Mauricio's important business associates will be there, including me, including you. I met his eyes. I have a plan, but I need to know. Will Mauricio act on proof, or will he let emotion cloud his judgment? Mauricio built his company from nothing. He's sentimental, but not stupid. Philip gathered the documents carefully. What do you need? Make sure everyone attends that dinner. And when I start presenting evidence, we'll back you up. He stood, straightening his suit. Mauricio's like a brother to me. I watched him work 20 years to build this company. Then help me protect it. After Philip left, I called Marlene. We're set for the dinner. Is Kaison still texting you? Non-stop. Says Angela told him I'm destroying the family by not helping with the house. Perfect. Forward me those texts. I smiled grimly. Mum always did love using Kaison as her emotional enforcer. Time to add his messages to the evidence pile. My phone buzzed. Mum again. Baby, Mauricio's so happy you're coming to dinner. He says you remind him of himself at your age. Smart with money, always planning ahead. If he only knew, I muttered. Another text followed. I know things haven't always been perfect between us, but this dinner means so much to me. A chance to show everyone what a close family we are. I thought about her journal entry, the cold calculation of using my emotional weakness about family obligations against me. For years she'd wielded guilt like a weapon, keeping us all dancing to her tune. My phone rang. Jocelyn. Your brother just showed up at our apartment, she said without preamble. He's drunk, saying you're tearing the family apart by not helping Mum. Don't let him in. He's part of her plan. Already handled. Told him I was calling the cops. He left, but Skylar... She paused. He said something about Mum promising him a cut of the money if he could convince you to do the right thing. Add it to the evidence file. I looked at Mum's text again. She wants to show everyone what kind of family we are. Fine. I'll show them exactly what kind of family we are. Be careful, Jocelyn warned. The bigger they are, the harder they fall, I finished. And Mum's about to fall hard. Another text from Mum popped up. Just picked out my dress for the dinner. Mauricio says I look like $1 million. I smiled at the irony. No, Mum. You look like several $1 million, but not for long. The dinner was 5 days away. Everything was in place. All I had to do now was wait and prepare to serve justice as the final course. The rooftop restaurant glittered like a jewel box against the night sky. I arrived early, clutching my designer handbag, borrowed from Jocelyn, which contained 3 identical folders filled with carefully organised evidence. Mrs. Schuyler? The hostess smiled professionally. The private dining room is ready. You're the first to arrive. Perfect. I needed time to place the folders exactly where I wanted them. The room took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows, crystal chandeliers, white roses everywhere. A long table was set for 12, each place setting probably worth more than my monthly salary. Mum had outdone herself. the perfect setting for her final performance. I heard her voice before I saw her. "Baby, you look stunning!" She swept in, wearing a red designer dress, Mauricio close behind her. She hugged me tight, whispering, "Thank you for not making a fuss about the house situation. Tonight's about family." If she only knew. The other guests arrived in quick succession. Philip nodded subtly to me as he entered with his wife. Mauricio's lawyer came with his partner, 2 other business associates, a local judge and his wife, and finally, to my surprise, my brother Kaison. "Hope you don't mind," Mum said sweetly. "Family should stick together." Kaison wouldn't meet my eyes. He looked nervous, fidgeting with his borrowed suit jacket. Once everyone was seated, the wine started flowing. Mum was in her element, charming the room with practiced ease. "Before we start," she announced, raising her glass, "I want to thank my beautiful daughter for helping us save our family home. Her generosity—" "Actually," I interrupted, standing slowly, "I'd like to say something first." Mum's smile flickered. "Baby, maybe wait until—" "I've prepared a short presentation." I pulled out the folders, starting to distribute them. About family, about truth, about consequences. "Skylar," Mum's voice held a warning edge. "This isn't the time. It's exactly the time." I placed the last folder in front of Mauricio. "Everyone, please open to page 1. The room fell silent as they began reading. Mum's face went from confusion to horror as she realized what they were seeing. "These are court records," I explained calmly, showing how Angela, my mother, defrauded her first husband, Robert, of nearly $500,000. Page 2 shows the bank transfers. Page 3 is her journal entry planning it. "This is ridiculous," Mum started, but Mauricio held up his hand, reading intently. "Page 4 shows the property records proving there is no foreclosure on our family home. In fact, Mum sold it last year for a substantial profit." I looked directly at her. "Before meeting you, Mauricio." The judge leaned forward, frowning at his documents. Mauricio's lawyer was already making notes. "Page 5 is particularly interesting," I continued. "It shows the cruise bookings. One way for Mauricio, round trip for Mum. Scheduled to depart the day before the River Heights profits clear." Mum stood up, knocking over her wine glass. "These are lies. Skylar's always been jealous of my happiness." "Really?" I pulled out her journal. "Should I read your leverage inventory out loud? Where you categorized your own children as financial targets." Kaison jumped up. "This is crazy. Mum wouldn't—" "Sit down," Mauricio said quietly. It was the first time he'd spoken. "Angela, is any of this false?" The room held its breath. Mum looked around wildly, mascara starting to run. "I can explain everything." "That's not what I asked." Mauricio's voice was ice. "Is it false?" The silence was deafening. Philip cleared his throat. "The trust fund terms are quite clear about financial fraud." "I did it for us," Mum cried, reaching for Mauricio. "Everything I did was to build a better life." Mauricio stood slowly, buttoning his jacket. "I'll have my lawyer contact you tomorrow." He turned to the room. "I apologize for this unpleasantness. Dinner is, of course, cancelled." One by one, the guests stood and left. Mum remained frozen, mascara streaking down her face as her carefully constructed world crumbled. "How could you?" she whispered to me. "Your own mother? You taught me well," I replied softly. "About family, about planning ahead, about using people's weaknesses against them." I picked up her journal. "I learned from the best." Kaison tried to follow me as I left, but I waved him off. "Your cut of the money's gone, brother. Better find another mark." In the elevator down, Philip touched my arm. "Mauricio wanted me to thank you. This could have been much worse." I nodded, suddenly exhausted. "Tell him I'm sorry it had to be this way. Don't be. Some people only understand consequences when they're public and permanent." The night air hit my face as I stepped outside. Behind me, 20 stories up, I could imagine Mom still sitting there, surrounded by the ruins of her final con. My phone buzzed. Jocelyn. "Is it done?" "It's done," I texted back. "And Mum's never going to see it coming." The aftermath hit faster than I expected. By midnight, my phone was exploding with messages, mostly from Mum's flying monkeys, the relatives and friends she'd manipulated over the years. How could you humiliate your mother like that? Family problems should stay private. You've always been a cold, ungrateful child. I blocked them all, one by one, until only Kyson's message remained. You better watch your back, sis. Mom's not done with you. Jocelyn poured me a glass of wine as I showed her the threat. Should we be worried? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Mauricio's lawyer. Miss Schuyler, we need you to come in first thing tomorrow. Bring any additional documentation you have. Your mother is making claims. What kind of claims? She's saying you fabricated everything to extort money from her and Mr. Perkins. She's threatening legal action. I laughed. Actually laughed. Perfect. Tell her to do it. I'm sorry. Tell her to sue me. Because I have something I didn't show at dinner. I glanced at the USB drive on my counter. Something she really doesn't want made public. The next morning, I walked into the lawyer's office to find Mom already there, wearing her victim face, the one that had fooled so many people for so long. My own daughter, she sobbed to the lawyer, trying to destroy my marriage with lies. Interesting approach, I said, sitting down, especially considering this. I pulled out my laptop and played the video, security camera footage from her old house, showing her laughing with Kyson about the foreclosure scam, planning how to squeeze money from me. Where did you get that? Mum's mask slipped for a moment, showing raw fury. Marlene had cameras installed years ago, after you stole her retirement. I smiled. She kept everything. Every conversation, every scheme. Want to watch more? The lawyer cleared his throat. Mrs. Perkins, given this new evidence. That's not my name anymore, Mauricio said from the doorway. None of us had heard him come in. The trust fund terms were very specific about fraud. Mum's face crumpled. Darling, please. The accounts are frozen, he continued, as if she hadn't spoken. The house is in my company's name. Your belongings will be packed and delivered to wherever you specify. You can't do this. She turned to me, eyes blazing. This is your fault. I'm your mother. No, I said quietly. You're a con artist who gave birth to me. There's a difference. She lunged across the table, but Mauricio's security was faster. As they escorted her out, her screams echoed down the hallway. You'll regret this. All of you. I'm sorry, I told Mauricio once she was gone. About all of it. He shook his head. Don't be. Philip showed me the pattern. The other men, the stolen money. I would have been next. He managed a small smile. You saved my company. Thank you. Back home, Jocelyn was waiting with takeout and concern. Is it over? Almost. I checked my phone. Dozens of missed calls from Kyson. Just one loose end. Right on cue, he banged on our door. Schuyler, open up. Mom's hysterical. They're taking everything. I opened the door but blocked his entry. That's what happens when you help someone commit fraud, Kyson. She's our mother. No, she's your meal ticket. And now she's broke. I met his desperate eyes. I have footage of you helping her plan the scam. Want to see how that plays with your probation officer? He stumbled back. You wouldn't. Try me. Walk away, Kyson. Find a real job. Stop being her puppet. After he left, Jocelyn hugged me. You okay? Better than okay. I pulled out Mum's journal, her precious record of manipulations. I'm free. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from Mum. You think you've won? I made you. Everything calculating and cold in you comes from me. You're just like me, baby. Always will be. I typed back. You're right about one thing. I learned from you. I learned what not to be. Goodbye, Mum. Then I blocked her number, permanently. What now? Jocelyn asked. Now? I looked at the journal, then walked to our fireplace. Now we burn the past. I struck a match, touched it to the journal's pages, and watched years of manipulation turn to ash. And tomorrow, she pressed. Tomorrow I live my life without looking over my shoulder for the first time in 25 years. I smiled as the last page curled into flame. Tomorrow I'm finally free. The journal crumbled to ash, taking my mother's power with it. In its place, I felt something new growing. Not revenge, not anger, but peace. The kind of peace that comes from finally standing up and saying, no more. It was over. And I had won. 3 days after the confrontation at the lawyer's office, Philip called me for coffee again. This time, he looked relieved rather than worried. "She's gone," he said without preamble. Packed up what she could and disappeared. Left her phone, credit cards, everything traceable. "Smart," I replied. "She'll resurface somewhere new, with a different name. Mauricio wanted you to know. She tried to access the accounts before she left. Multiple times." He smiled grimly. "The bank flagged some interesting transfer attempts." "How much?" "All of it. Every penny she could reach." He stirred his coffee. "She would have cleaned him out completely." My phone lit up with an unknown number. Kyson using a burner phone, probably. I declined the call. "Your brother's been calling the office too," Philip said, "claiming he has dirt on you, trying to leverage a payoff." "Let me guess. He's desperate for cash now that Mum's gone." "Got it in one." Philip leaned forward. "But there's something else. The River Heights deal. Mauricio wants to offer you a job. Says anyone who can spot financial fraud that well belongs on our compliance team." I blinked, surprised. "I'll think about it." Later that evening, Marlene came over with a bottle of wine and years of stored-up stories. "Your mother did this before," she said, pouring generous glasses. "When she was younger, small towns, lonely men, always moving on before anyone caught on." "How did you know?" "I didn't, not at first. But I kept everything, every receipt, every letter, every clue. Started connecting dots." She took a long sip. "That's why she turned the family against me. I knew too much." My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. This time I answered. "Baby, listen." Mum's voice. "Calling from a payphone, Mum. That's almost vintage." "You don't understand what you've done," she hissed. "I had plans, security." "You had marks," I corrected. "And schemes. And now you have nothing." "I'm your mother." "No, you're a cautionary tale." I met Marlene's eyes across the room. "Don't contact me again." I hung up as Jocelyn walked in with dinner. Was that her? Last gasp of a dying con. I turned my phone off completely. "She'll find new targets, new lives to destroy." "But not yours," Marlene said firmly. "Not mine." The next morning, I met with Mauricio's lawyer one final time to sign affidavits about Mum's fraud. The receptionist handed me a thick envelope. "From Mr. Perkins," she said. "Personal, not business." Inside was a letter. "Skylar, your mother fooled a lot of people, myself included. But you saw through her. You chose truth over family loyalty, right over easy wrong. That takes rare courage. The job offer stands, but so does my gratitude, personal and professional. You saved more than money. You saved years of future pain for everyone she would have hurt next. Whatever you decide about the job, know this. You broke the cycle. That's no small thing." Mauricio. Below his signature was a business card for a high-end therapist with a note. "She specializes in recovery from familial narcissistic abuse. Already paid for, if you want it." I slipped the card into my wallet just as Philip texted. "Kyson showed up at the office. Security removed him. He's spinning out. Might want to watch your back." As if summoned by the warning, my brother appeared on the street in front of me, looking desperate and unwashed. "You ruined everything," he shouted. "Mum's gone, I'm broke, and it's your fault." "No," I said calmly, noting the security guards already moving toward us. "Mum ruined everything. I just exposed it. She was taking care of us. She was using us. There's a difference." I stepped back as the guards approached. "Get help, Kyson. Real help. Break free like I did." "You think you're so much better than us," he spat, as the guards led him away. "But you're just like her. Calculating. Cold." "Maybe," I called after him. "But I calculate to protect, not destroy. That's the difference." I watched until he disappeared around the corner, likely off to drink away his latest failure. My phone buzzed one last time. Mauricio's lawyer. "Final papers filed. Trust fund officially revoked. It's done." I looked up at the clear blue sky, feeling lighter than I had in years. Mum was gone, her power broken, her web of lies exposed. She taught me everything she knew about planning, manipulation, and survival. She just never expected me to use those lessons against her. I pulled out the therapist card, finally ready to deal with the wounds she'd left behind. It was time to heal, and to become something she never could. Honest, real, free. The old family house stood empty, a sold sign swaying gently in the autumn breeze. I parked across the street, just watching. This was where it all started, where Mum first taught me about manipulation, about using people's weaknesses against them. My phone buzzed. Marlene. Ready for dinner? Jocelyn's already here helping me cook. These Sunday dinners had become our new tradition. Real family, built on truth instead of lies. Before I could reply, another text came through. Philip. Thought you should know. Angela surfaced in Miami, already engaged to some tech millionaire. I smiled, unsurprised. Mum would always be Mum, moving from mark to mark. But her world had shrunk. Mauricio's lawyer had made sure her fraud history followed her online, warning potential victims. Hey, a voice called from the house. Are you the previous owner's daughter? A young woman walked down the driveway, pregnant, glowing with happiness. We're moving in next week. The neighbours mentioned your family. Ancient history, I said. Make better memories here than we did. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost declined it, but something made me answer. Skylar? Kyson's voice, clear and steady. I'm at Healing Waters Rehabilitation Centre, part of the programme. We're supposed to make amends. I waited, listening. You were right, he continued. About Mom, about everything. I'm learning to see it now. The manipulation, the games. He took a deep breath. I'm sorry I helped her hurt you. Are you clean? 30 days, it's hard, seeing everything clearly for the first time. I know. I watched the pregnant woman return to her future home, her fresh start. Keep doing the work, Kyson. Call me when you hit 90 days. Back in my car, I found one last message. A forwarded email from Mauricio's lawyer. Someone matching Mum's description had tried opening accounts at 3 different banks using my social security number. Don't worry, the lawyer wrote. We've flagged all attempts. She can't hurt you financially anymore. I drove to Marlene's house, where warmth and honest love waited. Jocelyn was setting the table while Marlene pulled a lasagna from the oven. Her real recipe, not the fake one Mum used to claim as her own. Look what I found, Marlene said, pulling out an old photo album. Pictures from before, everything. We sat together, looking at images of a younger, innocent me. Before Mum's lessons about leveraging people's emotions, before I learned to question every act of kindness. You know what's funny? I said, closing the album. She thought she was teaching me to be strong, but real strength is this, building something true from the ashes of her lies. Speaking of building, Jocelyn grinned. Tell them your news. I pulled out some papers from my bag. I'm starting my own consulting firm, teaching companies how to spot and prevent fraud, using everything she taught you to help people instead of hurt them. Marlene nodded approvingly. Perfect karma. My phone lit up one final time. Another unknown number. But instead of Mum's voice, I heard Mauricio. Sorry to call like this. Just wanted to say, the River Heights project is complete. The profits she tried to steal, we're using them to fund a support program for financial fraud victims. That's amazing. You inspired it, he said simply. Sometimes the best revenge is creating something good from something bad. After dinner, I stood in Marlene's garden, looking at the stars. Mum was out there somewhere, planning her next con. Kyson was in rehab, fighting for sobriety. The old house had new owners, ready to fill it with real love. And me? I was finally truly free. Not because Mum was gone, but because I'd chosen to be different, to be better. Jocelyn joined me outside. Deep thoughts? Just realising something, I said. Mum always said I was just like her, calculating, strategic, able to read people's weaknesses. And maybe I am. But I'm using those skills to protect people now, to build instead of destroy. I smiled. She taught me everything she knew about manipulation and survival. I taught myself how to turn those lessons into something good. Inside, Marlene was laughing at something, the sound carrying through the open windows. Real laughter, not Mum's practiced performance. Ready to go back in? Jocelyn asked. Yeah, I said, turning away from the stars. I'm ready for whatever comes next. Because that's the thing about breaking free from toxic patterns. It's not about forgetting the lessons. It's about choosing every day to use them differently, to be better, to heal. And in the end, that's the sweetest revenge of all.
The rain pounded against my car windows as I watched my husband David pack my belongings into cardboard boxes. From the driveway, I could see his mother, Patricia, standing smugly in our doorway, finally victorious after 2 years of trying to destroy our marriage. "I can't believe you lied to me," David had said just hours earlier, his voice filled with hurt and betrayal. "Mom showed me everything. Your car registration to a parking lot, your suspicious bank transfers, even photos of you sleeping in your car. You're not really a software engineer, are you? You're homeless, using me for money." If only he knew the truth. The suspicious transfers were to my father's medical research foundation. The car registration was for my corporate parking space at Zhang Industries' secure facility. And those photos of me sleeping in my car, taken during my overnight surveillance shifts, monitoring potential corporate espionage. But I couldn't tell him any of that. Not yet. Not while my father was still tracking down the people who had tried to destroy our company and kill him 5 years ago. "David, please," I called out from my car. "Just let me explain." "Explain what, Sarah?" Patricia's voice dripped with fake concern. "How you fooled my son with your sad stories about your dead father? How you claim to work for some mysterious tech company but can't ever show him your office?" She walked over to my car, designer heels clicking on the wet pavement. "I had you investigated, you know. There's no record of a Sarah Zhang working as a software engineer anywhere in the city. Just a homeless woman with a history of dating wealthy men." I gripped my steering wheel tighter, fighting back tears. The investigation must have been what triggered our security protocols, erasing my digital footprint. Dad had warned me this might happen, that someone might start digging into my past. "I know what you really are," Patricia continued, leaning close to my window. "A gold-digging scammer who thought she could trap my son. Well, guess what? I win. David's filing for divorce, and you'll never see a penny of our family's money." What Patricia didn't know was that her family money was nothing compared to what I really was, the heir to Zhang Industries, one of the largest technology conglomerates in Asia. My dead father was very much alive, working undercover to expose a corporate espionage ring that had nearly destroyed us 5 years ago. As I watched David carry the last box inside, my secure phone buzzed with a message that would change everything. "Operation complete. Coming home. Time to show them who you really are. Dad." Attached was a news alert that made my heart stop. Buri A. King. Tech billionaire Michael Zhang returns after 5 years. Zhang Industries stock soars. Patricia was still gloating at my window when she noticed the headline on my phone. Her face went from smug to shocked in an instant. "Zhang Industries. But that's impossible. You're just a homeless." The sound of helicopter blades cut her off. A sleek black chopper with the Zhang Industries logo was descending onto their perfectly manicured lawn. The helicopter's landing kicked up a storm of debris across Patricia's prized rose garden. David rushed outside, shielding his eyes from the swirling wind as the aircraft's door opened. My father stepped out, looking exactly as he had 5 years ago. Elegant in his tailored suit, silver hair immaculate, that familiar kind smile on his face. Behind him, a team of serious-looking men in dark suits spread out across the property. "Sarah," he called out, ignoring Patricia and David completely. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" I stepped out of my car, rain soaking through my clothes. "Dad?" Patricia's face cycled through shock, confusion, and fear. "Dad? But you're dead." The investigation showed. "Showed what, Mrs. Harrison?" Dad's voice turned cold. "That Sarah's father died in a car accident 5 years ago. That she has no employment records. No permanent address." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Your investigation was very thorough. Unfortunately, you were investigating a cover story." David stepped forward, looking lost. "Cover story? What's going on?" Perhaps, Dad suggested, we should continue this conversation inside, unless Mrs. Harrison would prefer to discuss her connection to Harrison Technologies out here in the rain. Patricia's face went white. "Harrison Technologies? our biggest competitor and the company behind the attempted takeover that have forced Dad into hiding. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered. Dad pulled out a tablet, displaying documents that made Patricia sway on her feet. Really? Then perhaps you can explain why you've been meeting with your brother, James Harrison, every Tuesday at the Crown Hotel. The same James Harrison who orchestrated the attempt on my life 5 years ago. David's head snapped toward his mother. Mom? What is he talking about? It's all lies. Patricia shrieked. She's the liar. Living in her car, pretending to be poor. Actually, I finally spoke up, my voice steady. I never pretended to be poor. You just assumed. Those photos of me sleeping in my car? I was monitoring your meetings with Harrison Technologies executives. The parking lot registration. It's for the secure underground facility where we've been tracking your brother's corporate espionage operation. Security footage began playing on Dad's tablet, showing Patricia passing confidential documents to her brother, planning the takedown of Zhang Industries from within, using her son's marriage to get close to the heir of their biggest rival. You see, David, Dad explained gently, your mother isn't just a concerned parent. She's been part of a corporate espionage ring for years, and when you married my daughter. But before he could finish, Patricia made a desperate dash for her car. She didn't get far. The serious-looking men in suits moved with practiced efficiency, blocking her escape. Mrs. Harrison, a familiar voice called out, or should I say, Agent Harrison, I believe we have some questions about your CIA credentials. Federal agents emerged from unmarked cars surrounding the house. But as they moved to arrest Patricia, I noticed something strange in her eyes. Not fear, but triumph. You really think this is over? She laughed. You have no idea what's really going on. Why do you think I pushed so hard to end this marriage today specifically? Dad's phone suddenly buzzed with multiple alerts. His face darkened as he read them. Sarah, he said urgently, check the house. Now. Because today wasn't just any day. It was the day Zhang Industries was supposed to announce its revolutionary quantum computing breakthrough. And Patricia's desperate scheme to separate me from David suddenly made terrible sense. I raced into the house with Dad's security team, heading straight for my home office. The door was ajar. It had been locked when I left. Inside, my secure laptop was missing, and my backup drives were gone. Looking for these? David's voice came from behind me. He stood in the doorway, holding my laptop and drives, his face unreadable. David, please, I said carefully, you don't understand what you're holding. Actually, he replied, I understand perfectly. He pressed a sequence of keys on my laptop, and my heart stopped as I recognized the initialization sequence for our quantum encryption prototype. How did you know the sequence? He smiled sadly. Because I helped design it. Project Phoenix, ring any bells, Sarah? Or should I call you Agent John? Dad appeared behind him, and for the first time in my life, I saw real fear in his eyes. You're counterintelligence, Dad said quietly. CIA deep cover assigned to watch both sides, my daughter and your mother. David nodded. 5 years tracking Harrison Technologies espionage. 3 years documenting Zhang Industries' quantum computing program. 2 years, his voice caught, 2 years falling in love with my target. The room felt like all the air had been sucked out. Was any of it real? I whispered. All of it, David replied. Every moment. That's what makes this so hard. He turned to my father. Mr. Jean, your quantum computing breakthrough isn't just revolutionary, it's dangerous. In the wrong hands, it could crack every military encryption on the planet. We developed it for medical research, Dad protested, for predicting protein folding, finding cures. And what happens when someone like Harrison Technologies steals it? David countered. Your sister-in-law, Patricia, isn't just a corporate spy. She's a front for an international technology cartel. They've been playing both sides, Zhang Industries and Harrison Technologies, waiting for this moment. Suddenly, more alarms started blaring. On my office screens, security alerts flashed from Zhang Industries facilities worldwide. Right now, David continued, simultaneous raids are happening at every Zhang facility globally. The quantum computing data is being seized by international authorities. Your technology is being classified as a national security risk. And my mother? I asked, pieces finally clicking into place. Deep cover CIA, like me. Her arrest outside is theater, giving her cover to escape with the real target. Which is? David's face softened. You, Sarah. They don't just want the technology. They want the person who can rebuild it from memory. That's when the house's lights went out and gas started seeping through the ventilation system. I'm sorry, David said, pulling on a gas mask. But you're both coming with us. As my vision started to blur, I saw more figures in tactical gear entering the room. But through my fading consciousness, I noticed something odd. Dad was smiling. David, he said calmly, did you really think we didn't know? About you? About Patricia? About everything? The last thing I saw before passing out was Dad pressing his watch and the floor beneath us starting to move. When I regained consciousness, I wasn't in a CIA black site as expected. Instead, I was in a familiar place, the real Zhang Industries Command Center, 50 stories beneath our Hong Kong headquarters. Welcome back, sweetheart, Dad's voice came from nearby. I opened my eyes to see him sitting calmly at a control panel. Next to him, bound to a chair but very much awake, was David. How? David struggled against his restraints. The gas, the tactical team. We're all mine, a new voice said. My mother walked in, very much alive despite having supposedly died when I was a child. Did you really think the CIA was the only one who could run a deep cover operation, Agent Sullivan? Mom looked exactly as I remembered, just older and somehow more formidable. She was wearing a Zhang Industries executive suit, not the tactical gear from earlier. You see, Dad explained, we've known about the CIA's interest in our quantum computing project from the beginning, just as we've known about Harrison Technologies' infiltration attempts. So we created a triple-blind operation. The screens around us lit up, showing years of surveillance footage. David's recruitment, Patricia's meetings, everything. Sarah's homelessness was indeed a cover, Mom continued, but not for what you thought. While you were investigating her, she was allowing you to investigate her, all while running the real quantum computing project from a different facility. The prototype you seized, I finally spoke up, my voice hoarse, was a decoy. The real breakthrough happened 6 months ago. We just needed to flush out all the players. David's face showed the first crack in his professional demeanor. 6 months, when we got married. I did love you, I said softly. That part was real, but I also knew who you were from the day we met. Because I chose you, David, not the other way around. Agent Sullivan has an impressive record, Mom added. Top of his class at Langley, perfect deep cover credentials. Exactly the kind of person we wanted watching over our daughter while we completed the real project. Dad pressed a button, and screens worldwide showed Zhang Industries stock soaring as we announced not just a quantum computing breakthrough, but a complete quantum encryption platform, one that would make unauthorized surveillance impossible. So you see, Dad smiled, everyone played their part perfectly. The CIA got their operation thinking they were shutting down dangerous technology. Harrison Technologies thought they were closing in on their target. And he looked at me proudly. We changed the future of global communications. What happens now? David asked quietly. I stood up, walking over to him. That depends on you. Because while everything else was calculated, falling in love with you wasn't part of the plan. And now you have a choice. Mom handed me a key to his restraints and a Zhang Industries security badge. You can go back to the CIA, report what happened. Watch your career disappear as they realize how completely they were outplayed. Or, I held up the badge, you can join us. For real this time, no more covers, no more lies. Why would I trust you now? He asked. I leaned in close, whispering, because I'm giving you the one thing nobody else has, the truth, and a choice. 1 year later, Zhang Industries' quantum platform has revolutionized secure communications. David runs our counterintelligence division using his CIA experience to protect what we built. Patricia and her brother are in federal custody. It turns out even the CIA doesn't like being double-crossed. As for me, I still drive the same car, but now everyone knows who I really am. Sometimes on late nights at the office, David and I look back at our wedding photos and laugh about how many spies were in attendance, his, mine, and at least 3 other agencies. Mom says true love can survive anything, even international espionage. Dad says trust is built on truth, even if that truth takes time to be revealed. Me, I believe the best operations are like the best relationships, built on understanding not just who someone appears to be, but who they really are beneath all the covers and codes. And sometimes, the greatest security isn't in what you hide, but in what you choose to reveal. The leather-bound recipe book sat heavily in my hands, its pages worn from decades of use. Sarah's last gift to me, passed on just days before cancer took her at 35. While our wealthy family lived in mansions and drove luxury cars, Sarah and I had chosen a different path. She became a small-town baker, and I pursued my dream of becoming a chef. "Promise me you'll use these recipes, Emma," she'd whisper from her hospital bed. "They're more valuable than anyone knows." I'm Emma Chen, and until 6 months ago, I was just another struggling chef in San Francisco. After graduating from culinary school, I'd opened a small neighborhood restaurant called Homemade. Nothing fancy, just honest food made with love. Our parents and older siblings, successful business executives and lawyers, saw it as proof of our failure. Two daughters who play with food while their siblings run companies, Mom would say at family gatherings, her disappointment sharp enough to cut. The day everything changed started like any other. I was in my tiny restaurant kitchen, experimenting with Sarah's recipes. The book was extraordinary, not just for the recipes themselves, but for Sarah's meticulous notes in the margins. Complex flavor combinations, unexpected ingredient pairings, and techniques I'd never seen before. "Hey chef," Marcus, my sous chef, called out. "You need to see this." He pointed to the TV in a corner where a famous food critic was reviewing restaurants. I nearly dropped the bowl I was holding when I saw him describing an extraordinary sauce he tasted in Hong Kong. "This remarkable flavor," he said, "I've only encountered once before, at a small family restaurant in Beijing 20 years ago. The Chen family's imperial sauce. A closely guarded secret that died with the last chef. If anyone could recreate it, they'd have a culinary goldmine." My hands trembled as I opened Sarah's book to the recipe I'd been studying. There, in her careful handwriting, was a recipe titled Great-Grandmother's Imperial Sauce. Below it, Sarah had written, "Found in Great-Grandmother's trunk. The original Chen family recipe from the Imperial Palace." Our great-grandmother had indeed been a cook in Beijing's Forbidden City before the revolution. She fled to America with nothing but her skills and apparently some very valuable recipes. But our status-obsessed family had buried that history, embarrassed by their humble culinary roots. I spent the next week perfecting the sauce. The ingredients were simple, but the technique was incredibly complex. When I finally got it right, the flavor was unlike anything I'd ever tasted, sweet, savory, and utterly unique. The annual Chen family reunion was approaching, held at my older brother Michael's Palo Alto mansion. I decided to bring some of my dishes, including the imperial sauce. Maybe finally, they'd see value in what Sarah and I had chosen to do with our lives. "Emma's here," my sister Victoria announced as I walked in carrying my containers. Still playing restaurant while the rest of us build real businesses. Michael, our oldest brother and CEO of a successful tech company, barely looked up from his phone. Mom hurried over, her China suit immaculate as always. "Darling, you didn't need to bring food. We have caterers." She eyed my containers with barely concealed disdain. "From La Cirque." I set up my dishes on a corner of the buffet, including the special sauce I'd made. As family members arrived, they naturally gravitated toward the catered food, avoiding my corner as if it might contaminate their designer clothes. Then Uncle James, always the family rebel, tried my sauce. His eyes widened. This is incredible. It reminds me of something I tasted years ago in Beijing." Suddenly, everyone wanted to try it. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Even Victoria forgot her usual disdain, asking for the recipe. "It's just something I've been working on," I said quietly, from Sarah's old recipe book. Mom froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "Sarah's recipes? Where did she get them?" "Great-grandmother's trunk, apparently. There's lots of interesting things in that old book." "That book belongs to the family," Mom said sharply. "Sarah had no right to." "To what?" I interrupted. "To pass down her own grandmother's recipes, to value our real family history instead of the sanitized version you prefer." The room fell silent. I could see the wheels turning in Michael's head as he tasted the sauce again. "You know," he said slowly, "with the right marketing, this could be worth millions. We should discuss acquiring your restaurant, Emma. bring it into the Chen group properly. I thought of Sarah, of her passion for authentic cooking, of her belief that food was about love, not profit. The restaurant's not for sale, Michael, and neither are the recipes. Don't be stupid, Victoria snapped. You're a nobody running a tiny restaurant. We could make this huge. Like you made huge profits from great-grandmother's jade collection? I asked quietly. Everyone stiffened. Years ago, our parents had sold our great-grandmother's jade pieces for a fortune, pieces she wanted preserved in the family. That was different, Mom protested. We needed that money to build our position in society, to give you children opportunities, to erase our real heritage, you mean? I picked up Sarah's recipe book. Well, not this time. Sarah protected these recipes for a reason, and I'm going to honor that. As I turned to leave, Michael called out, "You're making a big mistake, Emma. That sauce could be worth millions with our backing." I paused at the door. It already is worth millions, Michael. You just don't know it yet. What I didn't tell them was that earlier that week, I'd received an interesting visitor at my restaurant, someone who recognized the imperial sauce immediately, someone whose offer would change everything. But I had no idea that my family was already plotting to take what they saw as rightfully theirs, or that Sarah had left me more than just recipes in that old book. The war for our great-grandmother's legacy was about to begin. The storm hit the next morning. I arrived at Homemade to find a crowd outside. Customers, food bloggers, and several TV crews. Overnight, a viral video of the famous food critic discovering my imperial sauce had exploded online. Chef Chen. A reporter thrust a microphone toward me. "Is it true you've recreated the legendary imperial sauce? How did you discover the recipe?" Before I could answer, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up. Michael stepped out, followed by two men in expensive suits. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced smoothly, "I'm Michael Chen, CEO of Chen Group International and Emma's older brother. We're excited to announce that the imperial sauce and all Chen family recipes will soon be launched under our corporate umbrella." My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" He gripped my arm, smile never wavering. "Let's discuss this inside, sister dear." In my office, Michael's true colors emerged. The men with him were corporate lawyers, armed with intimidating stacks of documents. "These recipes are Chen family intellectual property," Michael stated flatly. "Mom and Dad have signed affidavits confirming they never gave Sarah permission to take great-grandmother's recipe book. As family head, I'm demanding its immediate return." Sarah found that book in great-grandmother's trunk, which was left to her specifically. "A trunk of old clothes," Michael scoffed. "Any valuable contents clearly weren't meant to be included." Besides, his smile turned predatory. "How do you think health inspectors will react when they start receiving anonymous complaints about your kitchen? How long can a small restaurant survive repeated investigations?" "You're threatening me." "I'm protecting our family legacy. You have until tomorrow to sign these papers transferring all rights to Chen Group. Don't make this difficult, Emma." After they left, I sank into my chair, Sarah's recipe book clutched to my chest. That's when I noticed something odd, a slight bulge in the book's leather backing. Carefully examining it under light, I found a hidden pocket. Inside was an old letter, written in our great-grandmother's elegant hand. "My dearest granddaughter Sarah, I see in you what I see in few others, true love for our family's art. Not the money it brings, but the joy it creates. You remind me of my days in the imperial kitchen, before revolution and greed destroy everything. The recipes in this book are more than family secrets. They are our true legacy. The imperial sauce alone saved our family twice, once in Beijing when it bought our escape to America, and again in 1965, when its secret formula secured our future here. But there are those who would use these recipes for profit alone. That is why I entrust them to you, my quiet one who understands their real value. In the garden of our old home in Beijing lies proof of our history, documents that establish our original ownership of these recipes. I have arranged for copies to be kept safe with old friends. Protect our legacy, dear one. Money comes and goes, but true wealth lies in what we create with love. Your loving grandmother, Lin Chen." My hands trembled as I reread the letter. Sarah must have discovered this shortly before her illness. This wasn't just about recipes anymore. It was about our family's true history. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Mr. Wang, my elderly fish supplier, stood in the doorway. "I saw the news," he said quietly, "and I recognized that sauce." My grandfather was Imperial kitchen staff too. My heart skipped. Mr. Wang, did your grandfather ever mention the Chen family? He smiled mysteriously. Come with me. There's something you should see. His tiny shop in Chinatown concealed a surprise, a hidden room filled with historical documents and photographs. And there, in a faded photograph from 1940, stood my great-grandmother in the imperial kitchen, proudly holding a sauce bowl. Your great-grandmother wasn't just any cook, Mr. Wang explained. She was the last official keeper of the imperial recipes. When she fled, she took them legally. They were her responsibility to protect. He handed me a stack of weathered documents. My grandfather kept copies of everything. The recipe ownership certificates, the official authorization, all proving your family's rightful claim. I was speechless. These documents weren't just history. They were ammunition. But while I was discovering our true legacy, my family was making their next move. Victoria had convinced our cousin David, a popular food blogger, to write a scathing review of Homemade, questioning the authenticity of our recipes. The war was escalating, and I needed help. That's when I remembered another note in Sarah's recipe book, mentioning someone named Master Chen in Hong Kong. No relation, but perhaps an ally. I had no idea that my search for help would uncover an even bigger secret, one that would shake our family to its core. I'd arrived in Hong Kong as the city was waking up, the morning air thick with humidity and possibility. Master Chen's restaurant was tucked away in an ancient building in Kowloon, its faded sign barely visible among the neon lights. Inside, an elderly man was teaching a young apprentice the precise way to fold dumplings. Without looking up, he said in perfect English, "I've been expecting you, Emma Chen. Sarah told you about me." He smiled, his eyes crinkling. Sarah told me many things, including what might happen after she was gone. He gestured to a private room. Come, your family's story is longer than you know. Over tea served in delicate imperial porcelain, Master Chen revealed the truth. He wasn't just any chef. He was the grandson of the imperial kitchen's headmaster, and he'd been waiting decades for this moment. Your great-grandmother and my grandfather made a pact, he explained, unlocking an ornate wooden chest. They knew the revolution would destroy centuries of culinary heritage, so they divided and protected the most precious recipes. He spread out ancient scrolls and photographs. The imperial sauce you recreated. It's only the beginning. These recipes aren't just about food. They're about power. In the old days, these dishes were served only to emperors. They contain combinations of ingredients that affect mood, energy, even longevity. That's why Michael wants them so badly, I realized. The commercial potential is worth billions, Master Chen nodded. But there's something else you need to see. He played a video on his phone. Sarah's face filled the screen, recorded months before her death. Emma, if you're watching this, you found Master Chen. Her familiar smile, though tired, warmed my heart. There's something you need to know about our family. The truth hit like a thunderbolt. Our great-grandmother hadn't just been a cook. She'd been the illegitimate daughter of a royal concubine, raised in the imperial kitchen to protect her. The recipes were her birthright, passed down through generations of female chefs. That's why I left you the book, Sarah continued. In our family's history, it's always been the women who understood food's true power. Not as a commodity, but as a way to heal, to connect, to love. Master Chen handed me a USB drive. This contains everything: historical proof of your lineage, documentation of the recipe's origins, and evidence of their scientific properties. Sarah prepared it all before she died. Back in San Francisco, I found my restaurant surrounded by protesters. Michael had hired them to carry signs questioning our food's authenticity. Victoria was giving interviews about family recipes stolen by an ungrateful sister. But I wasn't worried. I'd learned more than just history in Hong Kong. The next morning, at the emergency board meeting Michael had called for Chen Group's new authentic imperial cuisine line, I arrived early. The boardroom was packed with executives, lawyers, and one special guest. The Chinese cultural minister himself, invited by Michael to legitimize their claim to the recipes. Michael smiled triumphantly. Emma, so nice of you to join us. We were just discussing the launch of our new product line. Interesting, I replied calmly. And what exactly are you launching? The Chen family's imperial recipes, of course. We have Mom and Dad's sworn statements about their ownership. I connected my laptop to the projector. Let's talk about ownership. For the next hour, I presented the truth. Documents, photographs, scientific analysis of the recipe's unique properties, and finally Sarah's video testimony. The cultural minister leaned forward, increasingly agitated. These recipes, he announced, are protected Chinese cultural heritage. Any attempt to commercialize them without proper authority would be problematic. Michael's face turned ash white. But our patents are invalid, I interrupted. Because Sarah and I filed the proper cultural heritage protection documents years ago. These recipes can't be mass-produced or commercialized. They can only be passed down through certified training, exactly as they have been for centuries. Victoria jumped up. You planned this all along. You and Sarah protected our true legacy, I finished. And now I'm offering you all a choice. I laid out my proposal. Homemade would become a culinary training center, preserving traditional techniques and recipes. Any family member willing to learn properly to honor the traditions and history would be welcome. But, I added, no shortcuts, no mass production, no selling out our heritage for quick profits. The cultural minister nodded approvingly. The Chinese government would be very interested in supporting such a venture. As a cultural exchange program, perhaps. Michael slumped in his chair, defeated. His dreams of instant billions evaporating. Mom stood up slowly. The recipes, they really came from her? From the royal family? I handed her great-grandmother's photograph. From a woman who valued tradition over status, who believed food should bring people together, not drive them apart. Tears filled her eyes. I never knew, we never let her tell us. 1 year later, Homemade has transformed. We still serve traditional dishes, but we also train new chefs in the ancient techniques. Victoria, surprisingly, was the first to enroll in our program. Turns out she has a natural talent for dim sum. Michael focuses on the business side, but differently now, promoting cultural preservation rather than exploitation. Mom spends hours in the kitchen, finally learning the family stories she once dismissed. Yesterday, a young girl watched me teach the imperial sauce technique, just as great-grandmother once taught it in the palace kitchens. Does everyone get to learn the secret recipes? She asked. I smiled, remembering Sarah's words. The real secret isn't in the recipes. It's an understanding that the most precious things can't be bought or sold. They can only be passed down with love. Master Chin visits often, helping us maintain the old traditions while creating new ones. The cultural minister's endorsement has made us a bridge between culinary worlds. In my office, Sarah's recipe book sits in a special place of honor. But it's no longer just a book of recipes. It's a reminder that our true inheritance isn't measured in money or status, but in the wisdom, love, and traditions we choose to preserve and share. Sometimes the greatest wealth isn't what we gain, but what we protect. And sometimes the most powerful recipes aren't for food at all. They're for healing the bonds that break when we forget who we really are. The day I was fired from Novatech wasn't the worst day of my life. That had come 6 months earlier when Mom's cancer returned. But standing in Marcus Sterling's corner office, watching him sneer at my request for flexible hours to handle her treatments, I realized just how cruel success could make people. Let me get this straight, David. Marcus leaned back in his Italian leather chair, his custom suit probably worth more than my yearly salary. You want special treatment because your mother is sick. Do you think Novatech became a billion-dollar company by accommodating everyone's personal problems? I stood my ground, 5 years of leading his R&D department giving me the courage to speak up. I've delivered every project ahead of schedule. I can work remotely when needed. My team supports. Your team? He cut me off with a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. Let's be clear. They're my team. Everything here is mine. That's what happens when you're the CEO. The Manhattan skyline stretched out behind him through floor-to-ceiling windows, a perfect backdrop for his power play. On his desk, business magazines featured his face under headlines like Tech's youngest billionaire and the new king of Silicon Valley. I just need 3 months. I tried again. The doctors say this round of treatment is crucial, and I need employees who put this company first. Marcus stood, straightening his tie. Your mother's health issues are not Novatech's concern. If you can't maintain normal working hours, I'll find someone who can. The threat hung in the air between us. I thought about Mom, how she'd raised me alone after Dad died, working 2 jobs to put me through engineering school. How she'd never missed a science fair or graduation, even when she was exhausted. How she'd beamed with pride when I landed this job at Novatech. Then I guess you'll have to find someone else, I said quietly. Marcus's smile was sharp as a knife. Security will escort you out. Your personal items will be shipped to you. He turned to his computer, already dismissing me. Oh, and David, don't expect a reference. As security walked me through the open office, past shocked colleagues and whispered conversations, I caught a glimpse of the presentation slides on the main screen. Project Quantum, $2.3 billion merger with Tech Corp Industries. Little did Marcus know, but that merger was about to become his biggest nightmare. Because while he'd been busy building his empire on the backs of overworked employees, I'd been quietly building something of my own. The idea had come during those long nights at the hospital during Mom's first bout with cancer. Watching the medical equipment struggle to communicate across different systems, seeing nurses waste precious time dealing with compatibility issues, I knew there had to be a better way. For 2 years, I'd worked on it in my spare time, a revolutionary quantum computing protocol that could seamlessly integrate any technological system, regardless of manufacturer or operating system. The ultimate universal translator for the digital age. Novatech's contracts included the standard clause claiming ownership of any innovation developed using company resources. But I hadn't used a single company resource. Every line of code had been written on my personal laptop, every test run through servers I built in my garage. And 3 months ago, just after Mom's cancer returned, I quietly filed the patents under my own name. The same patents that Novatech's merger with Tech Corp desperately needed to succeed. Walking out of the Novatech building for the last time, I pulled out my phone and made 2 calls. The first was to Dr. Sarah Chen, Mom's oncologist, upgrading her care package to the hospital's premium suite. The second was to my old college roommate, now a partner at Silicon Valley's top tech law firm. Hey, Michael, I said, watching Marcus's office through the glass walls as he probably drafted the company-wide email about my departure. Remember that patent portfolio we filed? I think it's time to take it public. The next morning, as I sat with Mom during her treatment, my phone buzzed with breaking news alerts. Mysterious PTNT FIALING 3 TNs NLVATCHCORPMEOGR. Wall Street QESTIONS VIABILITW of $2.3 billion test-stage deal. NOVATCHSTOCK PLUMNIKs on integration concerns. Mom looked up from her magazine, ever perceptive despite her illness. Something interesting on your phone, honey? I smiled, taking her hand. Just some business news, nothing as important as being here with you. But we both knew this was just the beginning. Marcus Sterling was about to learn a valuable lesson about what really matters in life. And it wasn't his corner office or magazine covers. Sometimes the worst day of your life becomes the catalyst for something extraordinary. And sometimes, when you choose love over power, you end up with both. The next few weeks passed in a blur of hospital visits, patent meetings, and increasingly frantic news updates about Novatech's crumbling merger plans. From my mom's premium hospital suite, I watched Marcus Sterling's empire start to crack. Tech Corp demands answers on integration protocol. Novatech faces shareholder revolt over merger concerns. Sterling's $2.3 billion dream deal on life support. You don't look very upset for someone who just lost their job, Mom observed one morning, her keen eyes studying me over her breakfast tray. Despite the aggressive treatments, she hadn't lost her sharp insight. Actually, I smiled, setting my laptop aside. I think I finally found my real job. My phone buzzed. Michael, my patent attorney, calling with updates. David, it's chaos over there, he reported gleefully. Sterling's been in emergency board meetings for 3 days straight. Tech Corp is threatening to pull out unless Novatech can guarantee system integration within 6 months. Which they can't do without my protocol. I finished. Exactly. Their in-house team says it would take years to develop something comparable. The board is demanding answers, shareholders are panicking, and Sterling, well, let's just say his tech's youngest billionaire crown is slipping. I glanced at Mom, dozing now after her morning medications. Have they figured out who owns the patents yet? No, but they're getting close. Sterling's lawyers have been crawling all over the patent office filings. It's only a matter of time. As if on cue, my phone lit up with another call. Nina Chen, my former deputy at Novatech's R&D department. David, she whispered urgently, Sterling's on the warpath. He just fired 3 people for disloyalty because they suggested looking for the patent holder instead of trying to build a new protocol from scratch. How's the team? Scared. Overworked. He's got everyone pulling 16-hour days trying to replicate your work. But David? She hesitated. There's something else. I overheard him on the phone with someone about alternative acquisition methods. He sounded desperate. I thanked her and hung up, my mind racing. Marcus Sterling hadn't built his empire by playing nice. When billions were at stake, people like him often decided that rules were for others. Sure enough, that evening, unusual activity alerts started pinging from my home security system. Someone had tried to access my garage where my development servers were kept. They're getting sloppy, Michael commented when I called him. I've documented everything. But David, you need to be careful. Sterling's not going to take this lying down. He was right. The next morning, a routine audit from the IRS arrived at my door. By afternoon, old college acquaintances were receiving calls about my concerning behavior. A reporter even showed up at Mom's hospital room, asking questions about my troubled childhood. Classic intimidation tactics, Michael assured me. They're trying to pressure you into revealing yourself. The good news is it means they're desperate. The bad news arrived 3 days later. Mom's doctor called me into her office, looking troubled. There's been a complication with the insurance, Dr. Chen said carefully. Somehow, all your mother's premium care authorizations have been revoked. They're saying she needs to move to standard care immediately. My hands clenched. Sterling. I'm sorry. Nothing. I stood up. Don't change anything about her care. I'll handle the bills directly. But Marcus Sterling's message was clear. He could hurt me through the people I loved. Walking back to Mom's room, I made a decision. It was time to stop playing defense. I called Michael. Remember that press package we prepared? Release it tomorrow morning. All of it. The full reveal. Are you sure? Once we do this, I'm sure. And Michael? Make sure every major business news outlet gets the video of Sterling firing me. The security cameras had excellent audio. The next morning, while Mom and I watched the sunrise from her hospital window, my phone exploded with notifications. Fired Novatech Gauge Engineer Reveled as revengestory Kiki Holodier. Steer lines fatal mistake. Full video of confrontation goes IRL. Novatech board KL's emergency meeting as SHR IS plunge 40%. Mom picked up her tablet, reading the headlines. Is this why you've been smiling at your phone all week? I took her hand. Part of it. The other part is your latest scan results. The treatment's working, Mom. Tears filled her eyes. You didn't have to give up your job for me. I didn't give up anything. I just finally understood what you always taught me. Real success isn't about corner offices or magazine covers. It's about doing the right thing, even when it's hard. My phone buzzed again. A message from Nina. Sterling's called an all-hands emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. He's ordered every department head to attend, including former employees. David, I think this is it. I squeezed Mom's hand. Get some rest. I have a meeting tomorrow. Give them hell, honey, she smiled. But remember, revenge isn't about destroying others. It's about building something better. I finished our old saying. I know, Mom, and that's exactly what I plan to do. Novatech's lobby looked exactly as I remembered it. All chrome and glass and carefully cultivated power. But this morning, the usual buzz of activity was replaced by tense silence. Every screen displayed the same news. Novatech's stock in freefall. The merger collapsing, and my face. The fired engineer who held their future in his hands. Security recognized me immediately. Mr. Wilson, the guard nodded respectfully, all traces of his previous dismissive attitude gone. The board is waiting in the main conference room. I checked my watch, 8:57 a.m. Right on time. The conference room fell silent as I entered. Familiar faces lined both sides of the massive table: department heads, board members, and major investors. Marcus Sterling sat at the head, his perfect facade cracking around the edges. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, his designer suit slightly rumpled. "David," he forced a smile. "Thank you for coming. I believe we have some things to discuss." "Do we?" I took my seat, setting my laptop on the table. I thought Novatech wasn't concerned with personal problems. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. The video of my firing had gone viral, with Sterling's callous dismissal of my sick mother becoming a symbol of toxic corporate culture. "The past is the past." Sterling waved his hand dismissively. "We're here to talk business. Your integration protocol. Obviously, there's been a misunderstanding about ownership." "No misunderstanding." I opened my laptop. "The patents are registered to me personally. Every line of code was written on my own time, using my own resources. Your lawyers have already confirmed this." "Then name your price." Sterling leaned forward. "Everyone has one." I pulled up a document on the main screen. "Actually, I have terms." "Terms?" Sterling's fake smile faltered. "First, Novatech will establish a comprehensive healthcare fund for all employees and their families. Full coverage, no exceptions." "That's not." "Second," I continued, "the company will implement strict work-life balance policies. No more 80-hour weeks or vacation shaming." "This is ridiculous." Sterling stood up. "We're offering you millions, and you want to play social justice warrior?" "Third," I met his glare steadily, "you resign as CEO effective immediately." The room erupted in chaos. Sterling's face turned purple. "How dare you?" "How dare I?" I stood up slowly. "You tried to intimidate me. You targeted my mother's medical care. You even sent people to break into my home." "You can't prove." "Actually," I tapped my laptop, bringing up another screen. "I can prove everything, including your insider trading last quarter, your offshore accounts, and those interesting emails about alternative acquisition methods." The board chairman cleared his throat. "Mr. Sterling, perhaps we should discuss these allegations privately." "This is absurd." Sterling slammed his fist on the table. "I built this company." "No," I corrected quietly. "You built an empire on other people's work and sacrifice. The real Novatech was built by engineers working overtime, by developers missing their kids' birthdays, by people like me who believed in creating something meaningful." I turned to address the board directly. "My integration protocol is revolutionary. With it, Novatech could dominate the tech industry for decades. Without it, the company will lose the merger and likely face a shareholder revolt." The chairman nodded gravely. "Your terms, Mr. Wilson, are non-negotiable," I finished. "But there's one more thing." I pulled up a final document, a press release announcing Novatech's new charitable initiative. The Grace Wilson Memorial Foundation, named for my mother, dedicated to supporting families facing medical crisis. "You're insane," Sterling whispered. "The shareholders will never." Actually, a new voice spoke up. James Chen, our biggest investor, stood. "The shareholders have already voted. Mr. Sterling, the board has lost confidence in your leadership. We accept Mr. Wilson's terms." What happened next was a blur of signatures and legal documents. By noon, Marcus Sterling had been escorted from the building, his empire crumbling around him. By evening, Novatech's stock had stabilized as the markets responded to the announced changes. 1 week later, I stood in Mom's hospital room, watching her read the news coverage. "Novatech announces revolutionary new direction," she read aloud. "Former R&D head David Wilson named CEO. My son, the chief executive. Acting CEO," I corrected. "Just until we implement the changes. Then I'm going back to R&D. That's where the real work happens." She smiled knowingly. "And the foundation?" "Already helping 3 families cover their cancer treatments." I took her hand. "Soon it'll be helping hundreds. Your father would be so proud." She squeezed my fingers. "Not of the success, though that's wonderful, but of how you achieved it. You didn't let bitterness win. I learned from the best." I smiled. "How are you feeling?" "Better every day. The doctors are very optimistic." My phone buzzed. A message from Nina about the merger negotiations. TechCorp was thrilled with the new direction. The deal would go through, bigger than ever. "You know," Mom mused, Marcus Sterling never understood the most important thing about success. What's that? Real power isn't about controlling others. It's about lifting them up. That's how you build something lasting. Looking out at the sunset painting the city skyline, I thought about everything that had changed. Nova Tech was transforming from a burnout factory into a model of corporate responsibility. Families like mine wouldn't have to choose between work and caring for their loved ones. And somewhere, Marcus Sterling was learning that true leadership isn't about corner offices and magazine covers. By the way, Mom added casually, when do you plan to tell them about your new quantum encryption protocol? I grinned. Some things never changed. Mom still knew me better than anyone. One revolution at a time, I replied. For now, let's focus on getting you better. After all, I squeezed her hand. Family comes first. Years later, people would study the Nova Tech transformation as a business school case. They'd analyze the strategy, the timing, the execution. But they'd miss the most important lesson. Sometimes the greatest victories don't come from destroying your enemies, but from transforming their weapons into tools for healing. And sometimes, when you choose love over power, you end up changing not just a company, but an entire industry. As for me, I still work late sometimes, but now it's by choice, usually brainstorming new ways to make the world a little better, one innovation at a time. After all, that's what real success looks like. The day of my father's funeral dawned cold and gray, fitting weather for what would become the most pivotal moment of my life. I stood in front of the mirror adjusting my simple black dress, the best I could afford on a research assistant's salary, while my stepsister Vanessa's words from last night's wake echoed in my head. God, Sarah, couldn't you at least pretend to dress appropriately? It's embarrassing enough having you here. My father, Dr. David Chen, brilliant scientist and family disappointment, according to my stepmother Isabella, had died suddenly of a heart attack in his small laboratory on the outskirts of the city. The same laboratory where he'd spent countless nights after being kicked out of the family mansion 5 years ago, when Isabella decided his obsession with failed experiments was too much to bear. The funeral was being held at the Chen family estate, a sprawling mansion that had once been my childhood home. Now it felt like enemy territory. As I walked through the ornate gates, memories flooded back. Dad teaching me chemistry in the kitchen, conducting experiments with baking soda and vinegar, his eyes lighting up when I asked questions about his research. Well, look who decided to show up. Isabella's voice cut through my reverie. She stood at the top of the marble stairs, a vision in designer black, her perfectly manicured hand resting on the banister. Next to her, my stepsister Vanessa smirked, both of them looking more like they were attending a fashion show than a funeral. It's my father's funeral, I replied quietly. Of course I'm here. Ah yes, your father. Isabella's lips curved into a cold smile. The brilliant Dr. Chen, who chose his precious experiments over his family's reputation. Tell me, Sarah, did he ever manage to create anything worthwhile in that rusty lab of his? Or did he die as he lived, a failure? I felt my hands clench into fists, but kept my voice steady. My father was not a failure. Really? Vanessa chimed in, her diamond earrings catching the light. Is that why he was living in that disgusting little lab while we maintained the family's social standing? Face it, Sarah, he was an embarrassment, just like you. The funeral service was torture. I sat in the back row, watching as Isabella played the grieving widow perfectly, accepting condolences from Silicon Valley's elite with graceful nods and dainty dabs at dry eyes. The true irony was that half these people hadn't spoken to my father in years, not since Isabella had systematically cut him off from his social circles. And now, the priest announced, Dr. Chen's widow would like to say a few words. Isabella glided to the podium, a picture of elegant grief. David was a dreamer, she began, her voice thick with fake emotion. Perhaps too much of a dreamer. He chose to pursue his unique ideas rather than focus on our family business. But he was a good man in his way. I wanted to scream. This woman had no right to talk about my father. She hadn't seen him in the last 5 years, hadn't witnessed his dedication, his passion, his absolute certainty that he was on the verge of something revolutionary. After the service, as people began to disperse, Isabella cornered me by the refreshment table. Now, about your father's lab, she said, dropping all pretense of grief. I'll be sending people to clear it out tomorrow. Whatever junk you left behind will be disposed of. You can't do that, I protested. That lab was his life's work. Actually, I can. The property belongs to Chen Industries, which as CEO, I control completely. Your father was merely allowed to use it out of my generosity. She smiled, showing perfect white teeth. Unless, of course, you can afford to buy it. We both knew I couldn't. My salary as a research assistant barely covered my rent in a tiny apartment. I thought not, Isabella continued. Don't worry, I'll have them throw away his things with all the respect they deserve. She paused, examining her manicure. Oh, and Sarah, don't bother coming back to the mansion. Now that your father is gone, there's really no reason for us to maintain any pretense of family ties. I left the funeral with tears burning in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Instead of going home, I drove straight to Dad's lab. The small industrial building looked shabby compared to the mansion. But to me, it had always felt more like home than that cold, perfect house ever did. Using my key, the one thing Dad had insisted I always keep, I entered the lab. The familiar smell of metal and chemicals wrapped around me like a comfort blanket. Everything was exactly as he'd left it. Equations scrawled on whiteboards, computer screens displaying complex molecular structures, and his old leather notebook sitting on the main workbench. That notebook. Dad had carried it everywhere, constantly making notes, drawing diagrams, muttering about getting the sequence right. Isabella had always mocked it, calling it his book of failures. With trembling hands, I picked it up. The leather was worn soft from years of use, the pages dog-eared and coffee-stained. As I opened it, a letter fell out, addressed to me in my father's messy handwriting. My dearest Sarah, it began. If you're reading this, something has happened to me. I need you to know that everything I've worked for, everything I've sacrificed, it wasn't for nothing. The formulas in this notebook, they work. The molecular stabilization sequence is complete, but there are people who would kill for this technology, people who wouldn't understand the importance of using it ethically. That's why I could never tell Isabella or go public before it was ready. My hands started shaking as I read further. The failed experiments Isabella had mocked. They were preliminary tests for a revolutionary carbon capture technology, a process that could literally pull greenhouse gases from the atmosphere and convert them into clean energy. If this worked, it would be worth billions, maybe trillions. But more importantly, it could help save our dying planet. As I read through the notebook, my scientific training kicking in, I realized Dad had done it. The formulas were elegant, the science sound. He'd solved problems that had stumped researchers for decades. This wasn't the work of a failure. This was genius. A noise outside startled me. Headlights swept across the windows as a car pulled up. Panic gripped me as I remembered Isabella's words. She was sending people to clear out the lab. They were early. I had to act fast. I saw Dad's old laptop on his desk. He'd always told me it contained his most important files. Grabbing it and the notebook, I looked frantically around the lab. What else would they destroy? What else did I need to save? The sound of voices outside spurred me into action. I spotted Dad's external hard drives in a drawer. Those two went into my bag. Then I noticed a small safe under his desk, one I'd never seen before. The combination. What would Dad have used? More voices, closer now. Keys jingling. With trembling fingers, I tried my birthday. Nothing. The handle of the front door started to turn. Mom's birthday? No. The door opened. In desperation, I tried the date Dad had first shown me, the periodic table, our special day, he called it. The safe clicked open. Hello? A man's voice called from the front room. Dr. Chen. Inside the safe was a single USB drive, labeled FALSAFE in Dad's handwriting, and a small stack of papers that looked like patent applications. I grabbed everything, shoved it in my bag, and looked around frantically for an escape route. The back door. Dad always kept it unlocked for emergency exits during dangerous experiments. I slipped out just as flashlights beamed through the main lab space. In the darkness, I ran to my car, parked around the corner. As I drove away, I saw men in dark suits entering the lab, carrying boxes and equipment. Isabella wasn't just clearing out the lab, she was searching it. She knew. That night, instead of going to my apartment, I checked into a small motel under a fake name. I couldn't risk Isabella's people finding me, not until I understood exactly what I had. Setting up Dad's laptop, I began to dig through his files. What I found kept me awake until dawn. Would you like me to continue with part 2, where we see what Sarah discovers and how she begins to fight back against her stepmother's empire. The next morning, my hands still shaking from what I discovered, I make 3 crucial phone calls. The first was to Dr. Marcus Jong, my father's old colleague from MIT who'd mysteriously retired the same year Isabella forced Dad out of the mansion. The second was to Maya Patel, my best friend from graduate school who now ran a prestigious environmental law firm. The third was to James Wilson, my ex-boyfriend who happened to be one of Silicon Valley's most successful venture capitalists. Sarah Chin. James answered on the first ring, surprise evident in his voice. We hadn't spoken since our breakup 2 years ago, when he'd chosen his career over our relationship. I heard about your father. I'm so sorry. James, I need your help, I said, cutting straight to the point. But first, I need you to sign an NDA. An hour later, I sat in a private conference room at James' office, watching his face as he reviewed my father's data. His expression shifted from skepticism to shock to something approaching awe. Sarah, he trailed off, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. This isn't just revolutionary, this changes everything. The carbon capture efficiency rates alone are 10 times better than anything currently on the market. And the energy conversion process, he looked up at me, eyes wide. Your father actually solved it. Yes, I said quietly, but there's more. I showed him the files I'd spent all night decoding. Dad hadn't just developed the technology, he'd documented every attempt Isabella and Chen Industries had made to steal his research over the past 5 years. Email threads, recorded conversations, surveillance footage, he kept everything. She tried to force him to hand over the patents, I explained, pulling up a particularly damning email chain. When he refused, she started spreading rumors about his mental stability, cut off his funding, and eventually kicked him out. But she never stopped trying to get her hands on his research. James whistled low. This is corporate espionage. Serious stuff. He paused, studying me. What do you need from me? Investment capital. Enough to set up a new company and fast-track the development. Maya's already working on securing the patents in my name. Dad had filed the preliminary paperwork before he died. But we need to move quickly, before Isabella realizes what she's lost. Before James could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Maya, 911. Turn on CNBC now. James grabbed the remote, switching on the conference room's wall-mounted TV. Isabella's perfectly composed face filled the screen as she stood at a podium in front of Chen Industries headquarters. It is with great pride that I announce Chen Industries' breakthrough in carbon capture technology, she was saying, her voice smooth as silk. My late husband's final project has yielded remarkable results, and we expect to begin implementation within the month. My blood ran cold. She was trying to claim Dad's research as her own. That's why they were searching the lab, I whispered. They're going to try to recreate his work. James's phone chirped. Chen Industries' stock was already soaring on the announcement, but I noticed something in Isabella's press conference, something that made me lean forward. The molecular stabilization sequence, she was explaining to the reporters, allows for unprecedented carbon capture rates. But her description was wrong. Completely wrong. It didn't have Dad's real research. They had whatever fragmentary notes they'd found in the lab, and they were bluffing. My phone rang. Dr. John. I saw the press conference, he said without preamble. She's desperate, Sarah. Chen Industries is in trouble. They've been covering up massive losses for years, using creative accounting to hide their failed projects. Your father knew. That's why Isabella wanted his research so badly. She needs a win to keep the company afloat. A plan began forming in my mind. Dr. Zhang, how quickly can you put together a research team? For David's daughter, give me 48 hours. The next 2 weeks were a blur of activity. While Isabella basked in the media attention, we worked in secret. James secured us lab space in an unmarked facility outside the city. Maya filed patents and trademarks under a series of shell companies to avoid detection. Dr. Zhang assembled a team of brilliant scientists who'd all been pushed out of Chen Industries over the years. But we had a problem. While we had Dad's research, we needed proof that Isabella had actively tried to steal it. The evidence on Dad's laptop wasn't enough. We needed recent documentation of their corporate espionage. That's when Vanessa's greed proved useful. My stepsister called me out of the blue, her voice syrupy sweet. Sarah, darling, I've been thinking about how awful we've been to you. Let me make it up to you over lunch. I knew it was a trap, but I accepted it anyway. The restaurant she chose screamed old money, all dark wood and crystal chandeliers. Vanessa was already there, wearing what probably cost more than my yearly salary. I feel terrible about how things ended at the funeral, she began, signaling for wine. And I want to help you. Help me? Of course. I know things must be difficult for you now, financially speaking. And well, she leaned forward conspiratorially. I know you have something Mother wants. Something from your father's lab? Ah, there it was. If you help us recreate your father's research, Mother's willing to be very generous. 7 figures generous. I took a sip of wine, buying time. And if I refuse? Vanessa's smile turned sharp. Don't be difficult, Sarah. Mother always gets what she wants, one way or another. What she didn't know was that I was recording every word. That afternoon, I met with Maya to review the recording. It's good, she said, but we need more. We need proof that Isabella knows her announcement was false. I might be able to help with that, a quiet voice said from the doorway. We turned to find Lisa, Isabella's personal assistant, standing there nervously. I've worked for Mrs. Chen for 10 years, she continued. I've seen things, done things, but claiming Dr. Chen's research, that's too far. I have documents, internal memos, emails, recordings of meetings where she explicitly discusses stealing his work. Maya's eyes lit up. Would you be willing to testify? Lisa nodded. Dr. Chen was kind to me. He deserved better. The pieces were falling into place, but we had to move fast. Chen Industries was already accepting pre-orders for their non-existent carbon capture technology. They'd announced a demonstration for major investors in 1 week. It was time to spring our trap. Are you sure about this? James asked as we prepared for the final phase. Once we do this, there's no going back. I thought about my father working alone in his lab, refusing to give up his principles even when it cost him everything. Unsure, I said. Let's end this. Would you like me to continue with part 3, where Sarah executes her plan and confronts Isabella at the investor demonstration? The day of Chen Industries' big demonstration dawned bright and clear. The company had rented out San Francisco's most prestigious convention center, and the media presence was overwhelming. News vans lined the street, reporters jostling for position as the world's most powerful investors arrived. I watched the live stream from our own facility, where Dr. Zhang and our team were making final adjustments to the real carbon capture prototype. We'd worked around the clock for 2 weeks, fueled by coffee and determination to bring my father's vision to life. Everything's ready, James said, adjusting his tie. As planned, he was attending the demonstration as a potential investor. Maya's team is in position, and the SEC agents are standing by. I nodded, checking my phone. A text from Lisa. She's nervous. Been practicing her speech all morning. Keeps changing the technical details. Of course she was nervous. Isabella was about to attempt explaining technology she didn't actually have. Mrs. Chen, a reporter's voice came through the live stream. Your company's stock has risen 300% since announcing this breakthrough. What do you say to skeptics who claim the technology isn't possible? Isabella's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. I say wait until the demonstration. My late husband's genius will speak for itself. I felt my blood boil at her casual appropriation of Dad's work, but I forced myself to stay calm. Everything depended on timing. At exactly 2 p.m., Isabella took the stage. The convention center was packed with investors, media, and tech industry elite. Vanessa sat in the front row, looking smug. Ladies and gentlemen, Isabella began. Today marks a historic moment in the fight against climate change. Chen Industries' revolutionary carbon capture technology will transform our world. She launched into her presentation, and I had to admire her acting skills. She spoke confidently about molecular bonds and energy conversion rates, delivering the carefully memorized script flawlessly. But I could see the panic in her eyes when questions started coming from the audience. Could you explain the stabilization process in more detail? One scientist asked. Isabella's smile flickered. Of course. The process involves specialized molecular sequencing. But how do you prevent degradation during the conversion phase? Another expert pressed. Our proprietary technology, Isabella started, but she was floundering. That's when James stood up. Perhaps a demonstration would be more convincing. Isabella's relief was palpable. Yes, absolutely. If you'll direct your attention to the main chamber. The massive machine behind her hummed to life. It was impressive looking, I had to give them that, all gleaming metal and pulsing lights. But I knew it was just for show. As you can see, Isabella continued, the carbon dioxide is being extracted from the air and converted to. The machine made a horrible grinding sound, then sparked dramatically. Emergency alarms began blaring. Minor technical difficulty, Isabella assured the murmuring crowd. Our engineers will. Or maybe, I said loudly, standing up from my place at the back of the hall. The machine doesn't work because you stole incomplete research and tried to recreate technology you don't understand. The room fell silent. Isabella's face went pale as I walked toward the stage. Sarah, she hissed, what are you doing here? Isn't it obvious, Mother? I continued, my voice carrying in the quiet room. I'm here to demonstrate my father's actual technology. Security. Vanessa shouted, but before anyone could move, the convention center's doors opened. Maya strode in, followed by a team of FBI agents and SEC officials. Isabella Chen, she announced, you're under investigation for corporate fraud, espionage, and securities manipulation. This is ridiculous, Isabella sputtered. I have proof. Documents. Forged documents, Lisa said, stepping forward. I should know, you made me create them. The next hour was chaos. While FBI agents secured Chen Industries' fake prototype as evidence, Maya presented our documentation of Isabella's fraud. The emails, the recordings. Maya's team verified the transfer. With Isabella's shares, I now controlled what remained of Chen Industries. The company that had once cast out my father was now mine. The irony wasn't lost on me. The next year brought changes I could never have imagined. Chen Sustainable Technologies installed our first large-scale carbon capture facility in California, with dozens more planned worldwide. The technology worked better than even Dad had predicted, giving real hope in the fight against climate change. Vanessa took a plea deal and served community service at an environmental cleanup organization. The experience seemed to change her. She later started a nonprofit focused on sustainable fashion. Lisa, Isabella's former assistant, became my trusted chief of staff, her organizational skills helping us manage our rapid growth. Isabella served 3 years in a minimum security prison. Upon release, she moved to a small house in Montana, about as far from her former lifestyle as possible. She sends me letters sometimes full of regret and attempted explanations. I read them, but rarely respond. On the first anniversary of Dad's death, I visited his grave early in the morning. The simple headstone stood in stark contrast to the ornate Chen family plot nearby. We did it, Dad, I said softly, placing fresh flowers by the stone. Your work is helping people, changing things, just like you always wanted. That afternoon, I had a board meeting in our new headquarters. The company had grown to over 1,000 employees, and our market value had reached $50 billion. But before heading into the meeting, I stopped by my office and opened Dad's old notebook, now carefully preserved in a glass case. Inside on the last page were words he'd written years ago. Success isn't measured in dollars or acclaim, but in the positive change we create. Remember that, Sarah. I did remember. Every day, as I stood looking out over the city, I thought about legacy. Isabella had built her empire on deception, desperate to maintain the appearance of success. Dad had worked in a humble lab, focused only on making his dreams reality. In the end, truth and dedication had won out over lies and manipulation. Real change had triumphed over empty promises. My phone buzzed. Another international contract, this time from India. More opportunities to implement Dad's technology to reduce carbon emissions, to make a difference. I smiled, touching the simple locket I always wore, the one containing a small piece of paper from Dad's notebook. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from destroying others, but from staying true to your principles and letting your work speak for itself. Dad taught me that, and it was the most valuable inheritance he could have left me. The world was changing, and thanks to him, I was helping change it for the better. That, I knew, would have made him prouder than all the billions in the world. The invitation to my brother David's billion-dollar celebration arrived wrapped in gold leaf paper, delivered by a personal courier to our family's modest auto repair shop. Dad barely glanced at it, continuing to work under the hood of a '67 Mustang. "You should go, Mike," he said, his weathered hands expertly adjusting the carburetor. "Your brother went to a lot of trouble to show off his success." Success. That's what David called it when he abandoned our family business 5 years ago to start his tech company. Now, at 32, he was Silicon Valley's newest billionaire, and he never let us forget it. I watched Dad work, admiring how his hands moved with perfect precision despite their age. Reynolds Auto had been in our family for 3 generations. My grandfather started it, my father perfected it, and now, at 28, I was learning its every secret. "Someone has to keep the shop running," I replied, picking up a wrench. "These cars won't fix themselves." Dad straightened up, wiping his hands on his work cloth. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to say something important, but instead just nodded toward the Mustang. "Let's finish this beauty first." The next evening, against my better judgment, I found myself walking into the Valley's most exclusive hotel. David had rented the entire top floor for his celebration. The elevator doors opened to reveal a scene of pure extravagance. Ice sculptures, champagne fountains, and Silicon Valley's elite in designer clothes that cost more than our shop's yearly revenue. "Mike," David's voice boomed across the room. My little brother finally decided to join us. He strode over, glass of champagne in hand, surrounded by his usual entourage. Everything about him screamed new money, from his $10,000 suit to his perfectly whitened teeth. "Where's Dad?" he asked, looking around with exaggerated concern. "Don't tell me he's still tinkering with old cars." "Someone has to run the family business," I said quietly. David laughed too loudly. "Family business? That old shop is an embarrassment." I offered to buy it, modernize it, turn it into something worthwhile, but Dad's too stubborn, too stuck in the past. A few of his tech friends snickered. I felt my face grow hot but kept my voice steady. "That shop put you through college, and look how I repaid that investment." He gestured grandly at the opulent room. "Tech Future is worth $5 billion. I made more money last week than that shop will make in a century." Before I could respond, the hotel's event coordinator approached anxiously. "Mr. Reynolds, there's an issue with the payment processing for tonight's event." "Handle it," David snapped, waving her away. "I'm celebrating my success." I noticed something odd in the coordinator's expression, but David was already launching into his favorite topic, himself. "You know, Mike, it's not too late. I could give you a job at Tech Future. Something entry-level, of course. Better than wasting your life changing oil." The way he said it, like he was offering a favor to a beggar, made something snap inside me. Our grandfather built that shop from nothing. Dad turned it into the most respected auto repair business in the city. We fix things, make them work better. "What exactly does your company do, David?" His smile turned cold. "We're a tech disruptor. We're revolutionizing digital payment processing with blockchain integration and—" "But what do you actually do?" The question hung in the air. I noticed a few nearby guests shift uncomfortably. "You wouldn't understand," David said dismissively. "It's beyond your technical expertise." Just then, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and for a split second, I saw something flash across his face. Fear. "If you'll excuse me," he said quickly, "business calls." As he hurried away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Dad had always told me to trust my instincts when working on cars. That same sense was telling me my brother's perfect world was about to crash. I didn't know then how right that instinct would prove to be. The next morning, I arrived at the shop early, as usual. Dad was already there, reading something on his ancient computer with an intensity I'd never seen before. "Tech Future's stock is crashing," he said without looking up. "Down 80% in pre-market trading. The SEC has suspended all trading." Before I could process this, the shop's phone started ringing. It was David. "Mike," his voice was frantic. "Is Dad there? I need to talk to him. Now." I handed the phone to Dad, watching his face as he listened. His expression remained calm, but his eyes hardened. "No, David," he said finally. "I won't sell the shop to cover your margins. Not today, not ever." He paused, listening. "You made your choices. Now you have to face them." He hung up, and almost immediately, my phone lit up with breaking news alerts. Tech Future CEO under investigation for massive fraud, screamed the headlines. Payment processing scheme exposed, declared another. Dad, I started, but he was already walking toward his office, a small room in the back of the shop that I'd rarely been allowed to enter. It's time, he said simply. Come with me. The office looked the same as always. Worn desk, filing cabinets, framed photos of classic cars. But Dad went straight to an old painting of a Shelby Cobra, removing it to reveal a safe I'd never known existed. Your brother chose flash over substance, Dad said as he worked the combination. He wanted millions without understanding value. But your grandfather, he understood real value. The safe opened with a click. Inside wasn't much. Some old papers, a leather notebook, and a small metal box. Know what these are? Dad asked, carefully lifting out the papers. I looked closer and felt my breath catch. They were patents, dozens of them. All in my grandfather's name. Every major auto manufacturer in the world uses these designs, Dad explained. The transmission synchronization system, that was your grandfather's. The adaptive fuel injection process, his too. He never sold the patents, just licensed them. Been generating royalties for 40 years. My hands shook as I read through the documents. The numbers were staggering. But the shop, we live so modestly. Dad smiled. The shop is real. The work we do here is real. That matters more than money. But make no mistake, Reynolds Auto isn't just an auto repair shop. It's the headquarters of Reynolds Engineering Holdings, worth about $12 billion as of this morning. I had to sit down. David, does he know? David never asked, never cared to learn about the family business, too busy chasing quick millions to notice the billions right under his nose. Just then, my phone buzzed again. Another news alert, Tech Future CEO David Reynolds arrested for securities fraud. Dad picked up the leather notebook. Your grandfather wrote everything down, his designs, his philosophy, his plans for the future. I've added my own notes over the years. It's time you started doing the same. Why now? I managed to ask. Because you were ready? You stayed, you learned, you respected the work. Just like I did with my father. He handed me the notebook. There's more. A lot more. But first, I think your brother might need a reminder about what real value looks like. The media circus outside David's downtown office building was in full swing when Dad and I arrived. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, and security guards struggled to maintain order. Through the glass doors, I could see federal agents boxing up documents and hard drives. Mr. Reynolds, a reporter recognized Dad. Your son David is accused of orchestrating a $4 billion fraud scheme. Any comment? Dad walked past them without a word, his worn work boots clicking against the marble lobby floor. The FBI agent in charge straightened when he saw us. Mr. Reynolds, he said respectfully, we've been trying to reach you. Had some cars to fix first, Dad replied calmly. Where's my son? They led us to what used to be David's corner office, the space that had once showcased his ego, all chrome and glass and modern art, now felt hollow. David sat slumped in his ergonomic chair, his perfect suit wrinkled, his lawyer whispering urgently in his ear. He looked up when we entered. Dad, thank God. You have to help me. The shop, we can sell it. Use the money for bail. My lawyer says. Be quiet, David, Dad said quietly, but with enough authority that the room fell silent. He pulled out an old folding chair from the corner, the kind we kept in the shop's waiting room, and sat down. You want to know why I wouldn't sell the shop? Dad continued. Why I never cared about your fancy offices and billion-dollar valuations. He reached into his worn leather jacket and pulled out a document, one of the patents from the safe. David's lawyer's eyes widened as he read it. Mr. Reynolds, the lawyer interrupted, this patent. The licensing rights alone would be worth more than Tech Future ever was, Dad finished, even before we knew it was built on fraud. David snatched the document, his hands shaking as he read. This is grandfather's, but this means, all these years, Dad said, while you were chasing paper wealth, our family already had what mattered. Not just money, though yes, Reynolds Engineering Holdings is worth billions, but purpose, legacy, real innovation that makes the world better. Why didn't you tell me? David's voice cracked. You never asked. Never spent time in the shop. Never wanted to learn. Dad stood up. You wanted shortcuts to success, David. There aren't any. The FBI agent cleared his throat. Mr. Reynolds, about the charges. My son will cooperate fully, Dad said. He'll face the consequences of his actions. He turned to David. But after that, if you're ready to learn, really learn, the shop will still be there. David's lawyer jumped in. Actually, about the shop. Given these patents, perhaps we could negotiate a deal with the prosecutors. The shop, Dad cut him off, isn't for sale. Never was. Never will be. He headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and David. That Mustang you used to love driving in high school? I just finished restoring it. When you're ready to understand what real value is, come by the shop. We'll talk. As we left, I saw David's reflection in the glass walls, tears streaming down his face as he watched us walk away. For the first time since he left the family business, he looked young again. Lost. Outside, the reporters were still shouting questions. But now they had new ones. Mr. Reynolds. Sources say Reynolds Engineering Holdings owns crucial automotive patents. Is it true your company is worth more than Tech Future ever was? Dad kept walking, but I noticed him smile slightly as he heard one reporter say to another, "Wait, the auto shop guy is the real billionaire?" 6 months later, I sat at Dad's old desk, now my desk, reviewing the latest licensing agreements from Toyota. The shop was still busy as ever, the familiar sounds of wrenches and engines creating their own kind of music, but things were different now. The safe behind the Cobra painting stood open, Grandfather's notebook resting on my desk next to modern patent applications. I'd spent months studying his designs, understanding not just the mechanics but the philosophy behind them. Each innovation wasn't just about making money. It was about making vehicles safer, more efficient, better for the world. David's trial had ended with a plea deal, 5 years in a minimum security prison and full restitution to his investors. But that wasn't the end of his story. Mike, Lisa, our front desk manager, poked her head in. He's here again. I looked through my office window to see David standing in the shop's waiting room. No designer suit today, just jeans and a worn t-shirt. He'd been coming by every Saturday for the past month, ever since the judge approved his pre-imprisonment work release program. The transmission on the Gibson family's Volkswagen needs checking, I said, watching him shift nervously. Tell him to start there. David had started at the very bottom, cleaning floors, organizing tools, learning the basics. Just like Grandfather had made Dad start, like Dad had made me start. No shortcuts this time. I picked up my phone to call Dad, who was at a meeting with German engineers about implementing Grandfather's latest fuel efficiency design. How's he doing? Dad asked, knowing why I was calling. Better, I replied, watching David carefully inspect the Volkswagen's transmission. He's actually listening now. Learning. Good, Dad said softly. Your grandfather would be proud. Later that afternoon, I found David sitting in front of the Mustang, his old high school car that Dad had restored. I was such an idiot, he said without looking up. All those years chasing fake success, trying to prove I was better than this place. I never understood what we really had here. I sat down beside him. You understand now. He nodded, running his hand along the car's perfectly restored fender. Every car that comes in here, we make it better. Every design in Grandfather's notebook, it makes things better. It's not about money, it's about making something real. Think you're ready to learn more? David looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. You teach me? After everything. I pulled out Grandfather's notebook. Family legacy isn't just about inheritance, David. It's about understanding value, real value. That evening, after the shop closed, 3 generations of Reynolds men sat in the back office. Dad had come back early from his meeting, bringing with him the signed contracts for our new electric vehicle charging system. Grandfather's last design, which I had finally figured out how to implement. David sat quietly as Dad explained how Grandfather had built everything, how each patent was designed to make vehicles safer, more efficient, more accessible. How the billions in licensing fees were just a side effect of doing good work. I made engines talk, David said suddenly, making us both look at him. Before Tech Future became about stock prices and impressing investors, I actually created something real, software that could diagnose engine problems just by listening to them. but I abandoned it because it wasn't flashy enough. Dad smiled. Grandfather would have loved that idea. It's not too late, I added. The shop could use a good diagnostic system. For the first time in years, I saw my brother's eyes light up with real purpose, not the artificial excitement of stock prices and valuations, but the genuine passion of creating something worthwhile. Today, Reynolds Auto looks much the same from the outside, a family-owned shop dedicated to fixing cars and solving problems. But inside, innovation thrives. David's diagnostic system is revolutionizing how we repair vehicles. Our patent portfolio continues to grow, each new design focused on making transportation better, safer, cleaner. The billions, they're still there, still growing. But like Dad always said, that was never the point. The real value is in the work itself, in the legacy of 3 generations dedicated to doing things right. Last week, a young mechanic fresh out of technical school came looking for a job. I watched David show her around the shop, explaining our philosophy with the same patience Dad had shown us. Remember, I heard him say, anyone can chase money. We chase excellence. Dad stood beside me smiling. Think she's ready to learn about the safe behind the Cobra? I watched her eyes light up as David explained how to properly diagnose an engine problem. Not yet, but she will be. Because that's what real legacy is about, not just preserving wealth, but passing on the understanding of true value. One lesson, one innovation, one person at a time.